green, and that's so you can see someone in the park, but you don't see there's people there.
All these people here. That's what Speaker's Corner
Yeah,
is.
right. Okay,
That's what we'll
very
be.
good point. Thank you
That's going to
very
be
much for that.
talking about in a second. Right. Oh, let me get my notes up. Can you move your drink over there so I don't knock it over? Because I'm going to be next to you. Brilliant. All right, and if you stand on that twig where you are, that's fantastic.
Right.
Holy smoke! Here we are again.
Are you streaming?
We are not live,
Okay,
but here I am, beamed down from Scotty upstairs in my special spaceship, and again he sent me to the wrong place. I was meant to be in Timbuktu examining the first university ever made, but here I am at Speaker's Corner instead. So you know what this means. It's Who is Speaker's Corner, and oh boy, have I got an incredible treat for you. I believe this gentleman here to be one of the most unique speakers at Speaker's Corner, and the longest running speaker here at Speaker's Corner.
Martin, actually.
Martin, okay, there you heard it here from the man himself. But I think we'd all agree that you are one of the most dominant figures here. Dominant speakers here, dominant thinkers and intellects, and somebody who brings debate and thought to Speaker's Corner, which is incredibly, can be a bit rare, unfortunately. So, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Okay, my name's Heiko Koo. I've been speaking at Speaker's Corner since 19. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to talk to them. To them. It's kind of difficult because it's like, okay.
To me, doesn't matter.
Okay. I've been speaking at Speaker's Corner since 19. The last. So, in December 1985, I started speaking at Speaker's Corner.
Remarkable.
And I've been at it on and off ever since. Generally supporting Marxist thinking, although I'd qualify that by saying that most Marxists don't agree with me. In fact, nearly all of them don't agree with me. But I still think, and I mean, all the Christians got their point of view as well, and they argue what they think is Christianity, and I'm arguing what I think Marxism is.
We'll get onto that, because that is a very point. I'm glad you brought that up. But first, I'd just like to give the viewers just what made you the person you are today? What was the first steps towards eventually you becoming a speaker at Speaker's Corner? So if you could just give a brief
When I was a
outline
little kid, I remember coming here on my dad's shoulders.
Wow.
And there was a speaker in the middle of the park over there, who was later, I found out, I think it was Elisa's boyfriend or husband. And he used to have a little red scarf on, and he spoke. I only remember people asking about the red, what have you got the red or something. I didn't know anything. I was a little kid, must have been, 4 or 5 years of age, I don't know. So I remember that. That's my first memory of Speaker's Corner. And then I got involved in various campaigns when I was 17 at college, including campaigns against nuclear weapons and stuff like that, and student issues, grants, that sort of thing. And then I went to Portsmouth Polytechnic, and in Portsmouth Polytechnic, we did a number of street campaigns. You'd join it. If you're a member of some group, you want people to sign petitions and join up your group and take leaflets, that sort of thing. But I always thought it was inadequate, and I always wanted to do something more theatrical and more outgoing to surprise people, stop them, get them interested, that sort of thing, as a precursor to giving out a leaflet or something like that. And so we tried to work out ways of doing it. And I saw this film or TV documentary about an American trade union movement called the Wobblies. And they went from town to town, unionizing the towns. They had a slogan, one big union. They would send people to every town to unionize the town. And when they did so, they get arrested by the police. And then they figured out, way around this is one person gets up to speak, the police take you down, take that person down, and then the next person gets up and speak, and then the police come for that one, and then the next one gets up and speak. It was a huge hullabaloo. So what happened was we did this type of thing in the street. We did find a way of stopping people. Basically, I would dress up as Thatcher, wearing an army uniform. This was in Portsmouth, a naval town. March up and down the street, speaking in her voice, and for some reason, it really gathered a crowd. And then I'd get up on the platform, take the mask off, and quickly make a speech. Like 2 minute speech about the campaign. Then the police would come, and they did this 3 or 4 weeks in a row, and then I said, well, let's do that what the Wobblies did. So I get up and speak. When they take me down and tell us to stop, you get up and speak. And so we had 3 people go up and spoke one after another. The police went bananas. The crowd loved it and were all with us. And then the police took us down. Then I got taken down, the police talking to me. Then my mate Martin got taken down, police talking to him. Then my mate Eddie was standing there going, do we have the right to speak on Commercial Road? And the whole crowd, yeah, like that. And the police were enraged, dragged us away, took us in. Saturday lunchtime, they let us out Monday morning straight to court. And the court didn't find, well, okay, the court found we'd carried out a breach of the peace, but didn't impose any fine on us, and all costs to be paid by the police. So that was my first experience of that type of stuff.
So go back a little bit to when you were coming here, saw Speaker's Corner. The next question to follow that is, what was your first sense of injustice? What was it that made you think, actually, I need to say something, need to interact with the crowd and communicate a very important, sincere messages? What was that? Do you feel that sense of injustice?
Well, I mean, some of that's private issues, but then other things are, which I'm not going to talk about, and other things are, I mean, there was a lot going on when Margaret Thatcher came to power. There were lots of issues which young people felt moved about, and that's what led me to get involved in politics. Like I said, nuclear weapons, the threat of nuclear war. I mean, I had a girlfriend at the time. She used to literally have nightmares about nuclear wars, and the whole East-West thing. And then I had family in East Germany. I went there when I was 17 to go and see what was going on there and what all these stories were about. And from that, I also had a different perspective on the world than perhaps a lot of people would have, because I'd been in the East. I had family over there. I could understand what they were saying. And for me, that was like two worlds. And it wasn't that I was supportive of the East, but it was that there were two worlds. There was a totally different world.
I think what you've just hit upon there is very profound.
Because very much.
Very, very profound, because I think a lot of people don't get this, not because of choice or anything, but having two worlds to grow up through. You have perspective, and you can compare each world to each other, and therefore start trying to create a bridge between each world. And how is it these two different worlds arise in the first place?
Yeah, exactly.
So you've come up from quite a
so that was
unique
that
education.
became my kind of speciality. So I spent the rest of my adult life investigating this. What was the nature, is the nature of the systems that exist that are different, that are called socialist or called communist, and that are totally different to those in the West. I mean, it was vastly different. The East German regime and the West German regime were totally different. And Berlin, which was the epicenter of all this, was split in half. And I lived in West Berlin and in East Berlin. And from that, I got an understanding of these two worlds. And that became my mission, literally. I thought I was, involved in this, what would be a key to understanding global revolutionary change. And so I went to East Germany. I went to West Berlin. I moved to West Berlin in order to make contact with people in the East. I moved into East Berlin. I did smuggle literature to the East. I discussed with people in the opposition. I tried to set up a little group there. We set up a group at the university and mobilized people at the university to create an independent student organization, which was illegal at the time. And so I was heavily involved in the events of that time, 1989, before the Berlin Wall came down.
Very significant part of history, and just so our viewers understand, because a lot of people won't actually realise this, during that period, 80s and around that period, we're having in our schools and our news media telling us what to do in case of nuclear war. We were literally in a world where nuclear war was an absolute reality. And the way to deal with a nuclear war was to hide under a door, by the way.
No, a table, yeah.
So I think this idea of conflict and propaganda is this part of having two, you're living in two worlds,
Yeah.
which is the same for me, by the way, which is we have that in common. This,
Which, by the way, I mean, in another way, is why you have so many Islamic speakers corner, or people from the Middle East, who again have a totally different perception of the world, a different worldview, and that's what motivates them to come here and speak at Speakers Corner, or to hang around at Speakers Corner and make their point of view. So it is clashing ideas that clash with the dominant ideas that lead people to feel motivated enough to stand up in a park and speak. It can also just be random sort of energy in a person that they want to stand up and say something. But I think underlying it all, there generally tends to be some sort of conflict between the world as you perceive it, the normal life of people, and you feel that there's something you can get across to people that represents a different worldview, can maybe shake people out of it or make people aware of it.
yeah, and I think we're about to get onto this subject, which is this having two worlds. I think places like Speaker's Corner, which I think you were alluding to, demonstrates entering another person's world. See, everybody here has their own unique world, which they come to communicate and share. Yes, they do it under the same umbrella, but fundamentally, I'm afraid, it's still a very unique and individual world everyone has. And the more that we learn about other people, talk to other people, it creates this perspective about the reality that we live in.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying here is that I think I'd like you to comment on what is the strength of Speaker's Corner and why should people come here?
Yeah, I used to make a radio show from 2003 to 2020, and I quite often, like every 4 or 5 shows, I would make the effort to wander around Speaker's Corner and meet the people and interview different people at Speaker's Corner. Just let me turn that off one second.
Oops, MI5.
Sorry. I would try and meet the people at Speaker's Corner, get to know what their ideas are, what their motivations are, how long they've been coming to the park, and all that. I met many people who've been here 60 years or more, and their stories about what happened here and why they come here. And I often ask that question. And it was very common for people to say that they'd come across ideas here that they'd never heard before and that opened their mind up to something. And it didn't really matter what it was per se that it opened their mind to, but it made them have a mental elasticity that allowed them to try and understand the world.
Yeah, so what Haiku is saying here that learning about different realities gives us true perspective on what we are as a human being. And with that, we can then start creating and forming thoughts that are beyond the propaganda, which is normally, I'm afraid, you're subjected to.
Yes, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there are people who accept mainstream stories. I do think that has been to some degree undermined, even in, let's say, the pandemic, when a lot of people went along with a lot of stuff and sort of vociferously argued for that type of thing, or felt someone was sabotaging if they say something different. Even those people, I think they're very skeptical of mainstream stories. They might jump along with this or that story, but they're still skeptical. Something about them underlying now makes them like something's not right about it. But I don't want to dispute it. I'm not gonna, you know what I mean? So I think there is an underlying critical thinking within society, but to break through and stand up and speak is a different thing. That you could say it takes some balls, but it's just a state of mind, and I think anyone can have it. Actually, I don't think it's unique to me, you, and the other speakers at Speakers Corner. I think it's something endemic to human beings. Don't forget, the majority of human history was the oral tradition. We would stand up and talk with each other. Communities would gather around the fire. People would tell their stories. Stories were told to pass down information and ideas. So the oral tradition was the dominant tradition in history, and that really changed. Really, like you can look back over the last 50 years or so, and you're talking about 30, 40 years ago, maybe 50 years ago. that the oral tradition declined significantly with the rise of general use of television and so on. But in the 1950s, for example, politics was made on the street in Britain. People would still, in the 1950s, Tories and Labour candidates would stand on street corners and make speeches and try to convince people at public meetings, have heckling and argument. And so, it's quite a recent phenomena that has declined and been transformed into like this type of medium, TikTok, video, online, blah, blah, blah. Some of it, I mean, obviously the Speaker's Corner stuff does somehow replicate that in some way, but in general, it's still different from the to and fro of a genuine debate in front of real people where ideas clash. And one of the advantages about Speaker's Corner is because we don't know each other. We know each other like I know you. We've met a few times. Like we're still there's a distance still. You can shout at me one day, and I'll shout at you one day, and insult you one day. Next week we're all right again, right? So you don't normally do that in a normal personal environment. You don't do that type of stuff in a normal environment. So in a normal family environment or in a school or college, you wouldn't do
Work.
that. Or work environment. You try not to step on and wind people up. And so Speaker's Corner is unique in that way, is that you're expecting that. Those of us who come here, we're expecting that. We're expecting someone to have a go at us and to disagree with us and to conflict with us. And we try and overcome that. And if you're a normal, civilized human being with some ounce of normal civility, you'll learn to, okay, I had a go at that person. I might have been ratty that day,
Yeah, being human can happen.
Of course you are. You're everyone comes to whatever's happened to everybody here. Maybe someone's family member died. Maybe they had a shitty day. Yeah. Maybe whatever reason. Maybe they had a great day, but then you pissed them off.
So just to clarify that, basically the majority of people here are wonderful, and yes, we can get a bit loud and we can get a bit not angry at you, but that's a very rare occurrence. But we're not here on purpose to generate insurrection or anger.
Some people are, but that's part of the game as well. But that you can do that because you're not dealing just with your family members or work colleagues or whatever. We're random people gathering at a park, so we can walk away. And we can go up and challenge. You have people come up to you, they're just standing speaking. They see that girl there, they get wound up at her and just shout at her, right? Someone will shout at her or shout at a Christian. And then they can either piss off or they can stay and argue. And if you know how to play the game, then you can stop that person, just embarrass them from walking away. And then you've got them, and then you might have a discussion. You might end up good friends. You might end up like lifetime enemies. You might end up, lovers. God knows,
So a two-part question. What does someone learn just by coming here and listening? And the second part is what does a person learn by coming here and becoming a genuine speaker here?
By listening, you can learn a great deal, as long as you engage with people, not just listen. If you engage with people, and some people come with a note and write down down that people say, they'll get a broad knowledge. There used to be a girl, Kelly Kickboxing. She used to come to, she does kickboxing basically.
So a surprise.
That's her. That's not her real name. Kelly was her name. Kelly Kickboxing. I remember because I had a website or whatever. She teaches that, and she used to say that she used to come down here and just pick up ideas, all sorts of ideas, and it's an opener. So if you want to know about Marxism, you can find a bit out. You want to know a bit about Judaism, you can find it out here. You want to know about Hinduism, Christianity, different sects of Christianity, different Muslim sects, different political groups, anarchism. You can find something out about all those things here, an opener. And you'll find someone who might be really into that. And having someone who's really into something, like at school, a teacher, if they're really into their subject, they might have gathered the attention of one or two students who might have gone on to study that subject. It doesn't mean that they knew everything about it and told you everything about it. They showed they had an enthusiasm for it. And then you ask yourself, or in the back of your mind, ask why? And then you begin to delve into it a little bit. I had a debate with Bob a few weeks ago about Christianity. There you go. I had a debate with Bob. He demanded a debate with me, and I promised I'd do it. And I said, okay. And it was a fair debate. He had a few minutes. I had a few minutes. A lot of people thought he came out on top because he was very convinced and very secure. And my arguments, it's true that I didn't know enough about Christianity to argue. I've subsequently spent a bit of time studying Christianity, so I'm preparing for our next debate. My biggest flaw was that I thought that Christianity in the early Christian doctrines was against slavery, and that Jesus was therefore some kind of slave rebel. And I subsequently found out that Christianity did not oppose slavery. But in any case, I even bought a book from a guy who used to come to Speaker's Corner. Reynolds, his name was, and I remember him from many years ago. He was about 90 when I met him in the 80s, and he ran some school somewhere in central London, and he had written a book about Christianity, which I remember reading bits of at the time because he gave it to me, and then it came to my mind, and I went and bought it off not Amazon but Books, and I got a copy at home, and I started reading it again.
Well,
to get me into to be able to debate the issues. If I was really honest, I couldn't debate with a Muslim because I've never read enough about Islam to make a proper comment about it.
Well, this is an area I've been specialised in the last couple of years now,
Okay.
and conflicts that have arisen from there. I think I don't want to get. I shouldn't be talking, but
Okay.
but I just quickly just say I classify these as the Abrahamic religions, and they all basically want the same thing and the same agenda. Looking at it from that perspective helps to clean up all the malaise of history which has happened, and working out. That's the platform I work from. But don't want to talk about me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with religious speakers. It's who would be here if there weren't any of them?
So I think I think the question was, what do we learn just by coming here?
So something.
We learn that our knowledge about reality has limits, and we find those limits, and instead of running away from it, we go off and do research, buy a book.
We can delve in, find a bit about it, and human beings are good communicators about things. Whether they articulate as well as a professor, perhaps not. Perhaps you could watch a 2-hour video and get more detail if you sat there taking notes. But if you wanted to find out the basic motivations, I think you're as well coming to Speaker's Corner, and in 2 minutes you could find out more, or in an hour hanging around without even realizing it.
Yeah, I think Speaker's Corner is what it presents is reality, and you're confronted with reality, and those thoughts that we have internally are challenged, and that's what for me one of the beauties of Speaker's Corner is. Would you agree with that?
I don't know about reality. I mean, it is reality, but it's a type of reality. It's mediated through the people who come down here. But there must be something driving the people to come here every week. There isn't anywhere else where that's going on. Something's driving people to come here, and they get addicted to it. So it's quite a good addiction to have, in my opinion. And then you asked about speakers. What drives someone to become a speaker? Again, they've got to have something really motivating them, I think. Sometimes it's about, the ego of the person likes to be that different to be a performer. So it could be the same thing that leads someone to become an actor or a stand-up comedian. But it is a bit different. So sometimes I've had people who are in the audience who are heckling me, and I think that person wants to speak, but they just haven't got round to it yet. And other times, there are people who just naturally, you can tell they just need to speak. There was a guy who comes to my mind. He was homeless, but he was obviously very well educated, and kept himself very clean. There used to be toilets down there, and he always used to be cleaning himself in there. But I'd never seen him speak. He'd come up and make really profound comments. And then I'd never seen him speak. And then one day, he was over here, huge crowd around him, talking in semi-Shakespearean language. And he was religious, but it wasn't clear that he was speaking to convince you of his religion. And I never saw him speak again, but I don't think I even saw him again. But that was his process, you know what I mean? He was many years, and must have been 15 years I saw him coming here. And then suddenly that was his eruption, and he had the biggest crowd. It's funny. Yeah.
So I think Speaker's Corner makes a human being grow. It makes them question themselves, and makes those processes in our mind, those narratives, the way we perceive the world clearer and more beautiful. And I think Speaker's Corner is a great gift for that. But
No doubt about that.
Huh?
No doubt about that. Yeah.
But there's two interesting questions here. There used to be lots of speakers' corners throughout all of England.
Yeah.
They've all disappeared, and I believe that is an attack on people becoming stronger people, like I've just described. It's an attack on that freedom, taking away people's freedom of speech and actual interaction, face-to-face freedom of speech. That is not social media. And also, the other question is, what changes have you seen here at Speakers Corner since your first time coming here?
Well, that's a long question. I mean, there used to be a lot of, there used to be a bit more politics, not much more.
Oh,
It's always about the individuals. It's always about like, do you have like 5 speakers who are motivated by something who are going to stand up and speak? So generally, you had quite long-standing speakers. You know, you've been here a few years now. Kyle's been here a few years now. Ishmael used to be here. There used to be the Socialist Party of Great Britain. They had one prolific speaker who had met Lenin. I mean, he was like 1921. He was in Moscow, and he used to be a really good communicator. Harry. He features in
Harry.
I can't remember the rest of his name, but Harry is his name.
Wow.
And he used to speak, explaining Marxist ideas from the Socialist Party platform. And then he was on. I knew about him meet Lenin because it was on. It was on. There was a People's History series, and they had a piece about Russia, and there he was. You know, in 1921, I was at the International Communist Party Congress. Proper Cockney he was, and Lenin stood up, and I was right in front of him like that. You know what I mean? He was like, so yeah, we go right the way back. You know, and there was no boy I used to bring down here, Ted Grant. He was the founder of the Trotskyist movement, or one of the major Trotskyist movements in Britain, which later became Militant Tendency, and he was recruited here at Speaker's Corner by, I think it was by, oh no, he used to have a platform here with CLR James, with the famous black revolutionary, Caribbean revolutionary, and writer about cricket and Shakespeare as well, and Jerry Healy, who founded the Workers' Revolutionary Party, all the leaders of the Actors Union, the Redgraves and all that, they were all involved in that. And so that whole the opposition to the Communist Party, actually, the founder of the left opposition to the Communist Party in Britain, used to speak here as well. Frank Ridley, he was the founder of that. And then the Communist Party used to speak, and the Black Workers Movement used to speak. Saul, who died recently, I did see him speak a few times when I first came up here. Lord Soper I used to see speaking here. He was a tremendous speaker. I mean, again, Shakespearean language. He was a Christian. He had the cassock, he had the cloth. And when he spoke, he very rarely mentioned God or Christianity. I remember him speaking over there once. He was going, there was a Ford worker strike, and he'd talk about the issues of the day. And he'd get a big crowd, maybe 100, 150 people. He'd stand on his own over there. And then, so one day he goes, and the Ford workers, they're supporting them. And then he goes, and like something like the power of God moves these people, like that sort of thing. You know, that's the way he approached it. And he did high music, high art. That's God moving people. And then another time, some people started to make fun out of him because he was a man of the cloth. And so they make fun out of him, trying to talk about sex and stuff like that. And he goes, sex. He goes, holding hands is sex, like that. You know what I mean? So he was a tremendous speaker. And he started in 1926, not here, but at Tower Hill. And then he started speaking here in 1940. And there's a story about that again. The bombs landed while he was speaking. So he goes, hold on a minute, and he goes, carries on.
That'd
you know what I mean?
V1 bomb then?
Something like that, yeah. So, I mean, we still had people from that era when I first started speaking here, who had spoken before the war. And there was a lot of entertainment here as well. Some strange characters did like sort of entertaining things. Like one guy would eat cigarettes and spit them out again, and pull them out of his ear, and like do things like that. Another guy used to do had been in the war and was a racehorse pundit.
That guy would be YouTube sensation.
Oh no, that's right. I mean, that was before the day, and you had to come to Speaker's Corner to see it. You know.
So, can you just briefly describe why you believe that there's less Speaker's Corner now around the UK? Just a quick.
Well, those reasons I was mentioning earlier on about the movement onto television, all that sort of thing. But
you don't think it's an attack on people becoming?
People have to be motivated to stand up and speak. If they're not speaking, it's because they're not motivated to do that. Now, what demotivates them, you could argue, well, that's their campaigns to push them into sort of silence, if you like. There's an element of that. I mean, for example, as a left winger yourself and myself, why are there no left wingers up here standing and speaking? What are they scared of? And I remember trying to get people from the group I used to be in to come and speak here, and they would come up and they would speak like one time to do a specific campaign, and then I couldn't get them back. They're not that secure in what they're saying.
Yes.
That's what it really is, because it's all one thing to get people to come to a meeting at university and start preaching your philosophy. But it's another thing to stand up in front of the ordinary public and be criticised and heckled.
Well,
And then the excuse they used to say to me was, "Oh, that's just full of tourists and nutcases." Well, it's not.
no, it's not. It's full of people. The people behind us right now, Muslims, socialists, Palestinian, anti-feminists, all these people are all doing, which I believe, a very beautiful part of demonstrating humanity, which is communicating each other peacefully. I think Speaker's Corner, its real great threat to the elite is it demonstrates how interested people are in other ideas, and they don't do it through the form of violence and hatred. They do it through the form of what we're literally witnessing right now through communication. Like your ideas that you bring here, some people would find it completely radical and abhorrent, but here you are doing it. And do you feel that you've grown as a person the more?
Oh yeah, Speaker's Corner. I mean, you're made by what you do and what your environment is,
Wow.
and Speaker's Corner made me. No doubt about that. Most of the love affairs I had in my life came from Speaker's Corner as well.
Crikey.
And not only, but most of them. Yeah, and long relationships and meaningful relationships over long term, as well as short ones. But and many of my best friendships have been at Speaker's Corner. I mean, I meet you more often than I meet most of my family, and the same with most of the people at Speaker's Corner. It's just the fact you're coming down here every week. How often do you go and see your family? Not every week. So I know lots of people around here I can say hello to. I know most of the speakers.
Would you like to describe the diversity of the people you know?
I've got to call a halt now because it's a little bit short, but we'll do that another time. Yeah?
All right. Well, when you come here, when you come to Speaker's Corner, would you just like quickly just to say what demonstrates a good person at Speaker's Corner, and what the qualities of interaction and being here? What are those qualities that you should bring here?
Being affable, being willing to listen, debate, being willing to tell you when they disagree with you, being smiling like this gentleman here, and being open-minded. He's that man over there is a Tory. He runs, or he's always been a Tory.
He's got a
He
communist
runs lots of restaurants. Oh, he's got a communist dad. Well, there you go. And he's always interested to have a chat.
Yeah.
We're a community of diversity and discussion, and that's the nature of Speaker's Corner. There's a guy called Frank Ridley. He used to publish a few little documents here, a few little publications, and he used to sit down the bottom there and sell his publications. And he wrote, "Speaker's Corner is the university of the people," and I think that's true. And I've taken that on board throughout my adult life.
Fantastic. Right, some very simple questions now.
No,
very simple, very quick.
It's too long now.
Very quick. If you could recommend one film to someone to see, what would it be?
Well, I was just looking at a film this week, which I recommended to some people today, and that would be Paths of Glory, Stanley Kubrick, about the First World War and the rebellion of the French army.
One book you recommend someone to read?
I mean, okay, an unusual one perhaps. A book by a Chinese revolutionary by the name of Wang Fengxi, Xi, and it's called Chinese Revolutionary. It's a very moving story about his life and the development of Chinese society.
And the last question: one artwork a human being must see, and then we'll say goodbye after that.
Well, okay. There's a photo montage from John Hartfield called "Millions Stand Behind Him," and it's a parody of Adolf Hitler, and it tells you what Adolf Hitler was. Not very nice artwork, but it does that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you, hug. That's been Haiku. He's been a gentleman, a star, and please
Thank
come
you.
to Speaker's Corner to listen to him engage and do it with reason, thought, and intellect. We'd
Very
all
well.
appreciate that.
Very well. Thanks
Thank
very
you
much.
very much.
Cheers.
Wonderful. My name is Dust. I am settled, relatively speaking.